Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Ayşe Süberkaş. Recently released photos and video by Anadolu Agency confirms what Ankara has been warning about for years, that Greece is continuing to violate international law by militarizing islands in the eastern Aegean Sea. The latest island in question is Keçi, or Pisarymos, as it is known in Greece, which lies just a few kilometers off Turkey's coast. The tiny islet, just 8 kilometers from the resort city of Bodrum in Turkey's southwest, has seen recent construction of prefabricated buildings and watchtowers. Video also shows Greek troops and heavy weapons being deployed across the island. Ankara has long argued that Keçi Island is legally required to remain uninhabited and demilitarized. Turkish officials have also repeatedly condemned Greece's militarization of other islands in the eastern Aegean, saying it goes against the 1923 Treaty of Lausanne that established the modern borders of both Greece and Türkiye. And to discuss where tensions between Ankara and Athens could be headed, joining me now from Ankara is Tudor Onia. He is an assistant professor at Bilkent University. And from Ankara, Mehmet Uğur Ekinci. He is a Turkish foreign policy researcher at SETA, a security and policy think tank. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So, Tudor, Turkey and Greece have long-running disputes over a number of issues. But what has caused this latest flare-up between the relations? Is there any significance to its timing?
As far as I can tell, this was due to the visit to the United States by Mitsotakis. So this happened last month. And during this visit, apparently what he did was to violate an existing gentleman agreement that existed between him and President Erdogan by actually lobbying members of Congress not to allow the sale of F-16s to Turkey. Then this led to a number of statements that, Mitsotakis no longer exists and therefore there shouldn't be any more negotiations. And of course, this led to an escalation in rhetoric and, of course, in gestures of the two sides, culminating with a military exercise that Turkey has conducted this month.
We know that militarization of islands have been ongoing for a while, Mehmet, but why has Athens been militarizing the eastern Aegean islands? What are their intentions and what kind of signal they're trying to send to Turkey?
They are claiming that they are doing so as a precautionary measure for self-defense. But it's very clear, at least if you look at the 1947 Paris Treaty, it's very clear that these islands should be and should remain demilitarized. So Turkey is suspecting that Greece is laying the groundwork to one-sidedly change the balances in the Aegean in their favor in the future. This can happen when the international balances can give them the floor and support, whereas Turkey is left alone or sidelined in the Western alliance and in the Eastern Mediterranean. So Turkey is also perceiving security threat from the militarization of the islands. And it's also important that to have trust in neighborly relations, the two sides may have to make their intentions clear. So while having such a clear clause in a treaty and not conforming to that clause is creating trust problems from the Turkish side. So,
Tudor, could you talk to us about Greece's threat perceptions? Greece argues that this policy is a right to self-defense. Is that so?
It depends what perspective you're assuming, right? For Greece, you have to realize this is a country that is about 4 times smaller than Turkey is. And this makes it nervous. As Turkey is becoming stronger, particularly militarily, as Turkey is also conducting an expansive foreign policy, this is alarming Greece. My colleague has spoken about intentions. The problem here is in international relations, intentions are never clear. Somebody who is about to attack you is not going to declare it openly. And therefore, it is conceivable that from the point of view of Greece, there is some nervousness about the the intentions of Turkey. Of course, there is also the nationalist concern about the clear demarcation of territory between the two sides. And to this extent, of course, even though there are international treaties, national interests, national security interests have primacy. So they are considered to be more important, and they are considered in this case to take precedence over any other considerations.
So, Mehmet, is this a controlled escalation, or there is a risk of this boiling over into a real conflict?
Having a conflict between two NATO allies is very unlikely. We haven't seen any precedent to that. But the debates about these issues, these long-standing issues, have been escalating for the last few years. And there were certain crises the two countries experienced in the year 2020. Yes. So there was this Evros or Meriç incident, and in the summer there was this tension in the Eastern Mediterranean. So the two countries should always accept the risks of escalation, and I think it's very important to think of certain scenarios when these escalations may lead to more grave tensions, because as we know from the Kardak crisis in 1996, sometimes things can go out of hand. So I think there is always this risk, and the risk is real for both sides.
Yes.
And it's not just one-sided risk.
So, Tudor, how do you think the U.S. is watching this latest escalation over the Aegean? What kind of a balance it is striking between two neighbors as well as two NATO members, and especially as NATO leaders meet in Madrid?
Well, of course, when you have to look at the United States, you should consider that the United States has bigger things on its mind. First of all, it has the conflict in Ukraine and how to deal with Russia, and also in the wings is how to deal with China. And so any distraction from this big, great power competition is a problem for the United States. The United States isn't likely to look kindly on whoever it perceives to be the sort of troublesome factor, so the sort of state that causes trouble in a secondary region. And so the question here is between Athens and Ankara, which of the two sides manages to cast each other in this position of being the villain of the piece. And certainly, I mean, Athens has tried its best to do this throughout the last year, and we could also see some signs of this during Mitsotakis' visit last month.
So is this latest spike, Mehmet, intention somehow linked to the expanded military agreement between Greece and the US, which gives Washington a greater access, troop access to land and naval bases on Greek territory?
Yes, it's a great question. And I think Turkey's reactions is not only Greece's steps in last years, but also Turkey is perceiving threat from other Western allies, including the United States. So there were certain security and military cooperation agreements signed between Greece and the United States and France. And these are creating suspicions and also concerns in Turkey about whether Turkey is being sidelined in the Western alliance in favor of Greece. And this can have a number of repercussions about Turkey's security and Turkey's alliances, Turkey's position in the region and international politics. So I think we should understand the bilateral issues within a larger, wider perspective.
So given the current tensions in the region, Tudor, are there any prospects for both countries sitting down to try to resolve their disputes through once strategic council meetings? Or are we too far away from that?
I don't think we are too far. In fact, I would say this is probably a negotiation in another form, with the two sides trying to sort of pressure each other into giving concessions. So I don't think necessarily that this precludes diplomacy. It's probably a prelude. So what we are going to see is more of a sort of alternation between this type of heated rhetoric, maybe some military moves, threats, and on the other hand, then a return to the negotiation table.
So could Mehmet, Turkey and Greece move towards solving their disputes in the Aegean, Eastern Mediterranean, divided island of Cyprus and refugee pushback separately? I mean, are channels of communication still open?
Today, the president made it very clear that for a while we will not be expecting any high-level meetings between two countries. But of course, these two countries are neighbors. There are diplomatic relations. There are venues and platforms that the representatives of two countries come together. So dialogue will continue, but for a while it will be a low-level and more technical dialogue. So this gives us little hope about big leaps, positive leaps in relations between two countries. But still, I think there are enough mechanisms to prevent big crises.
So, Tudor, who is going to take the first step?
Whoever feels weaker. So essentially, at this point, this is still an ongoing contest. As you have mentioned, Greece has, and all of the moves that Greece has done, the accord with France, although this was signed at the French insistence rather than at the Greek one, the effort to try and get bases from the United States actually, to some degree, might show a little bit of vulnerability. And after all, we should remember that it was Ankara who suspended the talks. So from this perspective, from this point of view, we can look at the present situation and say that Turkey might have a little bit of an upper hand at the moment.
So, Mehmet, are we likely to see tensions between the two countries die down in the foreseeable future? And what will it take for this to happen?
Well, to be realistic, I think the tensions will continue, but I hope the two leaders in two countries and also responsible officials will find methods to keep dialogue going and prevent future problems, big crises to happen.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.